Yes, here we are on a Friday morning. No, Monday morning.
No, Monday
Monday
morning.
morning. I was just zipping through the week there so fast I couldn't contain myself.
Uh,
Pat, how are you this morning? Is the sun
I'm
shining in
glad you.
Donegal?
Actually, there's definitely. Jesus, it's been a long winter.
Ah,
I noticed this last sort of week or so. You know that there's a sort of spring-like feeling there.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
the sun's getting a wee bit higher in the sky. In the winter, the sun is always very low. I see today the sun is actually quite high in the sky, and you can see the days are getting longer. Like I was looking out the window last night at about 10 to 6, and I remember looking out and seeing light. God, dude, that's to me, that's great.
It'd be very interesting, Pat, if somebody did a psychological study to see why is it that we cheer up so much when there's sunshine and we get down the
Uh,
dumps when there's rain.
Growth and renewal.
Huh?
What do sunshine and longer days makes her almost a reflection of her lives. Winter seems dead, almost like dead.
Yeah,
Things are dying.
yeah, yeah,
Jesus,
that's true.
no, Jim, we're not going down that road. That's not what we're here for.
I don't know, Pat. Wisdom in all areas, I say. Very
Yeah,
important. Okay, all right. We'll stick
yeah,
to political for the moment.
yeah.
Okay, the first thing we want to talk about is the appearance of the First Minister, not the Deputy First Minister, but the First Minister on the Late Late Show on Friday last. Tell us what your thoughts were, Pat.
But you know something? I watched it. I actually watched it live, and I thought to myself, "Oh, wait a minute, hey, this is unbelievable." Michelle, come on. Now, I don't know, Judah. Maybe I'm going to sort of should be very careful about describing appearances. But Michelle seems to look, you can
She
get
looked
accused of sexism.
sensational.
She's looking extremely well. I don't know what she's done, whether she's lost. I genuinely don't know, but she's, whatever. And she seems to have taken on some persona. I don't know what it is, but she looks the part and she's acting the part. She come on, Jude. I couldn't help but compare and contrast her appearance with the first time Jerry Adams appeared. Uh, on comes Michelle. She's warmly greeted by Patrick. The audience, quite obviously, are in love with her. She's beloved. She gets warm rounds of applause. What she says is unrelenting positivity, reaching out, etc., etc., etc. And I remember sitting watching, I think it was October the 28th, 1994, shortly after the ceasefires was announced and the revocation of Section 31, and Jerry Adams
Yeah.
came on. Gay Byrne, he's introduced and describes him as the most hated man in Ireland, which I thought was quite an achievement. And he refuses to shake Adams's hand, and he refuses to sit beside him. And he's got an ambush panel
Who
set
was,
up.
who was in that
On it.
firing squad, Pat? I'm trying to remember now.
And the firing squad, Hugh Leonard was on it, and he was virulently anti-republic. Michael McDowell was on it, the former Minister for Justice. I'm trying to remember. Austin Curry. And it was just a firing squad panel, along with, of course, Gay himself, whose father was in the British Army. Anyway, the ultimate West Britain, in my opinion, but there's quite a few contending for that particular title. Anyway, it was an absolute. I remember that, and it was the hostility. And when Jerry came out first, there was a spattering or a spluttering of applause. By the time it was finished, Jerry had won quite a considerable crowd out. But what I was thinking, Jude, the things that have changed so much, but the absolute, vitriol that was dripping out of that whole show that night. I was thinking, Michelle O'Neill. It was a day and night comes to mind.
I thought I know you're reluctant to comment on any female's appearance, but I will. I thought she looked sensational. She was wearing a red trouser suit and she was wearing high heels that would give you vertigo just looking at them. They were so high.
Yeah,
But she handled herself perfectly. Actually, she avoided at least one question, which was, I think Patrick Hildy asked her, glorifying or celebrating or commemorating IRA dead. I don't think she answered that. She slid away from it, but she did it in such a way that it didn't look like she was evading the question. But she really was. I was trying to remember how fast did she speak at first, and was she still speaking as fast? And is it just we've got used to it, or is it that she slowed it down a bit? What do you think?
No, she's definitely got. Should I presume she's got some sort of voice training because she's way slowed down. Yeah,
Yeah.
she was very very good. She, by the way she answered the question was that like all communities respect their dead, but we have to move forward. You know, you know, it's a well rehearsed line at this stage. But you know, it was all positive, positive, positive. She didn't hark back to the past. And you know, she said, you know, as usual, regret every death in the past. But she says we can't control what happened in the past, but we can control what happens in the future, which is a very good line as well.
Tell us this, Pat, and then we'll move on to the next one. I'm a cynic, and the thought crossed my mind: would Sinn Féin or would you know, Republicans have planted a couple of people to start applause? Because the applause was very striking, very solid once it started. I'd say at least 4 times in the course of the interview, the audience burst into applause, and eventually they weren't just applauding with their hands; they were whooping and whistling and stuff, you know, in approval. Do you think there been plans to get that going?
No, Jude, I don't think that's how it works. The Late Late Show, people apply for tickets, and I think and I'm pretty certain it's based on a random basis. I was in the audience once. There was something on one time. My dear missus, come on, we've never been to the Late Late Show, so she applied for tickets and we got them. You know, now but it was for a show about 3 or 4 months down the line. It wasn't any particular show.
Oh, I see.
So I think, you just don't get the tickets for a particular show. Now, maybe I think there could be invites to certain people, you know, like family if somebody's on or something like that. But I think it's pretty random. So I doubt it very much. Sinn Féin could orchestrate a sort of a couple of plants.
Okay, that's fair enough. Actually, I was thinking not so much of the Late Late Show. It was just that when I watch Question Time each week, I sometimes think that there's an occasional plant put in there because they come up with such questions that they really get the audience going.
Without question, the BBC they can claim all they want, but I don't believe they're bona fides when it's saying that the audience are selected at random. There was a great guy a couple of years. He said he was in favour of that sort of 0 hours contracts. You know, he says, I says, I'm a student and it gives me time. I can work whenever it suits me. He was the only person I've ever heard saying they were in favour of 0 hour contracts. Dilly Murray, as far as I remember, checked them out. He was a Tory activist. You know, like it was basically a Tory policy to, you know, get cheap workers for the big bosses who vote for them.
Well, that was a thought that crossed my mind, but I accept your point that the Late Late Show might be a different animal. In any case, the applause sounded very solid, and it also sounded, dare I say it, very sincere, because they weren't just clapping in the end; they were whooping and hollering and whistling between their fingers.
If you compare and contrast, you know, as they asked you to do in your exams when you're reading poetry, the two, Gerry Adams' first appearance and Michelle's first appearance, you sort of go, you'd need a political scientist or a sociologist to say what's changed in Irish society that made such a difference.
Well, if you stop and think about it, I don't know the answer to that question, but if you stop and think about it, both interviews were similar in 2 regards. One is that Gerry Adams throughout was very cool and relaxed, and so was Michelle.
Absolutely.
And secondly, it ended up with the audience clapping their hands off, and in both cases with Gerry Adams and Michelle. In some ways, I always think that I was glad that Michelle did such a good job, but it's one of the high points of broadcasting, in my experience, was the way Gerry Adams turned that audience around by the way he dealt with it.
Absolutely.
And the way he defeated 4 people who wouldn't just want to shake hands with him and who were really violently against him, you know. Brilliant.
Yeah. By the way, Jude, I've always came to the conclusion, and I do firmly, Irish people hate unfairness. Even with, I think the whole thing about Gerry Adams, they saw it for what it was, an ambush, and they didn't like the fact that 4 or 5 were piling in on one person. And Gerry Adams, in fairness to Gerry said, "Look, wait a minute, you know, I am not a 2-headed monster. Circumstances, place, time, events shaped my life. It's all very well for the Dublin 4, you know, right-wing West Brits to hide on here. They didn't have my experience. And by the time he was finished, he was actually getting quite a substantial round of applause from the audience. Oh, by the way, was Sinn Féin on 2% of the vote? But back then, they were hardly rabid Republicans in the audience.
That's right. I suppose Irish are good at looking after the underdog or supporting the underdog because we've been the underdog ourselves so much.
Anyway, Jude, here we're moving on.
Okay.
There's a guy, Stephen Flynn of I don't know if you know him, but he's the SNP leader in Westminster. And on Wednesday, he announced yesterday that he is tabling a motion, which, and I don't know if the governments can block it, but he's demanding a vote on Gaza where they will have to call for a ceasefire. So now I'm not going to use that American term, but they'll have to do something or get off the pot. Either Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer will have to come out and say they're in favour of a ceasefire in Gaza, or Flynn says it'll fall to the MPs to do the moral thing and call for the ceasefire. What's your opinion on this?
I would say that both Starmer and Rishi Sunak will find ways of wriggling around that. They'll abstain, or they'll say we want to have a codicil or whatever. Let's change that a wee bit. Let's shape that question a little bit. I mean, the thing's outrageous. This killing has been going on, mass slaughter, for many months now. 3 months, 4 months, and they're getting around to passing a motion in the House of Commons. I mean, come on. We're not asking them to put on their battle armor and go out there and take on the Israeli troops. We're just saying pass a motion. 4 months, 3 months, and it's a big deal.
It's 5 months, Jude.
5 months, my God. And it makes you ashamed to be a human being. That's the truth. Really?
Yeah.
Really. I think the way I
was watching the news. Go ahead, Jude.
I was going to say, I was reading an article where somebody said that, oh yes, it was that little guy owns something that writes, Jones, I think, who writes for The Guardian. And he was on a thing on YouTube where he was saying that this response to Gaza was going to change the whole sort of balance of power in the world. That the West,
the global South will never ever accept the West again as being a moral arbiter and anything. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the point I was going to make. Sorry, I interrupted you. Can you still remember what you were saying?
No, the whole thing. I think it's unbelievable that I'm just following off your point. 5 months on, they haven't even got the moral sort of whatever it is to call for a ceasefire. And you're dead right. They will find weasel words to not call for ceasefire. And we're now hitting close to 30,000 dead. What is I don't know how many wounded. There is not a hospital left operating, and we're sitting watching genocide and so on. And yet, I would love to know. I genuinely love to know what the Israeli lobby has on British politicians and American politicians. Because Jude, I was watching Claire Daly on the Week in Politics last night.
Yeah.
She says the political class are way behind the people on the streets who are calling for a ceasefire.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. But just take 1 minute on this, Pat, because it's such a tortuous question. See the Sinn Féin going to Washington on Paddy's Day? Yes or no? Should they go? Should they not?
I'm actually really conflicted on that. I really am. I've heard 2 or 3 different versions there. Those who said the Palestinian ambassador in Dublin actually is quite in favour of them going, saying because if they go, they can raise it on the world stage. What's the president, etc., etc., etc. That a sort of a boycott, nobody will notice, and it'll do Ireland harm. The other people saying, and I sort of can understand, they're saying going along and sort of meeting Joe Biden, genocide Joe, sort of giving cover and so on. So Jude, I am totally conflicted on. Really, like if you're asking me what my gut feeling, I would say is boycott the bloody thing.
I think I probably share that. On the other hand, Michelle O'Neill was asked that question.
It's not the smart thing to do, Jude, but it's the thing you should do.
Well, she said, actually, I thought it was quite a telling phrase. She said, if that had been applied to the Good Friday Agreement, arriving at the Good Friday Agreement, if people hadn't talked to other people that they detested, then it would never have been a Good Friday Agreement. I thought that was a very powerful sort of argument. I hadn't thought of it before, but I know I can see your point. To some extent, I think maybe my gut feeling, like yours, that maybe the sinners shouldn't go, comes from a desire for something nice, quick and clean and done with. Whereas the other's
yeah.
slightly more nuanced. You're going, but you're going to raise the issue with them and push your case.
Yeah.
I don't think honestly it's a cop out. I think it's just not as clean cut,
No.
sort of
I
emotionally
mean, see, Jude,
satisfying.
and I hear, somebody, I heard a very logical person saying, yeah, you make the protest this year, and you've lost it forever for Ireland. Next year, you can't go. What did you achieve?
Aye, that's right. That's right. Okay, Pat, let's move on to a third topic, which is a new book that's come out called The Disappeared, and it's by a Padraig O'Rourke.
O'Rourke, I think it is.
O'Rourke. And
Yeah,
he's claims that government parties in the Republic attacking Sinn Féin on the issue of the disappeared is hypocritical. And he says, if you look at Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and sure, we know this ourselves, don't we? The establishment parties in the South make a lot of political capital out of criticising the Provos, but they did the same kind of thing when they were involved in conflict as the good old IRA. What do you think of that as an argument?
Well, no, Jude, I was reading about that yesterday. I just happened to come across it, and I thought the reason I threw it out there, Jude, is I had a conversation with a certain lady quite a few years ago. I was at a family event, and she started to tell me about her grandfather had been in the old IRA, and he had no time for this modern day provos. And I started looking up some of the things that happened during and I discovered that the good old IRA of the 40 or not 40 years ago, 50, 70, 80 years ago, was not as good old IRA as some of the things. There was executions, Jude, in fields. There was guys found shot dead behind barns. There were some fairly brutal. There were there was guy was it down at Bannockstrand or somewhere in Kerry. They were tied to a post, 5 or 6 of them, and allowed to drown. There was other ones who were blown up.
Attached to a landmine.
Attached to a landmine. Is that the good old IRA? Jude, what is it? A much hurt, deep hatred. So Jude, this whole thing. Your man was making the point. O'Rourke was making the point that it's a bit hypocritical for people who are now in Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, pointing the finger at Sinn Féin when their antecedents politically were exactly in the same. Do you remember the famous one about a lot of 1920? A lot of the guys were coming. They said they were still semi-wild men. They were coming into the Dáil with guns under their coats. So this whole thing, civil wars are horrible things because the hatred is very deep. So there's, for them to now, when you hear Micheál Martin as if to, the Stanley who else Sinn Féin, there was things going on here, and nobody's denying that. But there was things going on in the 1920s as well.
Would that be the argument, though, Pat, that you could say 2 wrongs don't make a right?
Absolutely. But Jude, what I think is it's a wee bit rich. These people taking the moral high ground and yet revering the founding fathers. Like David Valera was up to his eyeballs. Frank Aiken was up to his eyeballs. Sean Lamass was supposed to have, who was a Taoiseach, supposed to have shot somebody. Whatever, and you could keep going through. And the way that Michael Collins is revered as the father of Fine Gael, and so on. And you're going, these guys, Michael Collins ordered the execution of 13 people in the one morning, like that's sort of thing. Oh, Martin McGuinness was a terrible man. Well, okay, if Martin McGuinness was a terrible man, so can you use the same term? So was Michael Collins, so was him in the Valera.
That's right. In fact, if you think about it, the bigger the number of killings, in many cases, the less blame's attached. Like most people would say that Harry Truman, they wouldn't say of President Harry Truman that he was a mass murderer, but he gave the okay for 220,000 people to die, be vaporized with the atom bombs.
Vaporized,
exactly. So I think you have to accept the fact, and you see, a lot of us spend a lot of time avoiding this fact. Once you say that you're going to go to war, what that means is you're going to see if you can kill more of the other guys than they can kill of your lot. That's a terrible, terrible thought when you think about it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really, we're down
when you look at what's happening in Gaza, I'm not minimizing or degrading or anything. It's the fact that 1,400 Jewish people were killed by Hamas on that October 7th. But Jude, talk about grotesque, disproportionate now. It seems like the Israeli state is just going to genocide, and you sort of go like, and we're sitting watching it on TV. And it's an amazing thing, Jude, that we're sitting watching some of the stuff that's coming out. Last night there was on BBC. There was a wee girl. She's a disabled brother. It what do you call him? Fergal Keane followed them. The wee girl escaped. They've been following her for about a month. She escaped to Egypt last night. And you sort of sit and watch and go, this is unbelievable. The bombs, I can't remember the name of the hospital now. It's no longer functioning. So they think there are people just dying in there from lack of care. And of course, the Israelis are usual as UNRWA, that this was another Hamas outpost. Jude, everything. Look, there's, what is it, 2.2 million people hemmed into one of the smallest open prisons on earth. And the Israelis keep saying that they're using human shields. Can Hamas do? They're a resistance movement. They can't. Do they want them to come out in open field and say, "Oh, here we are"?
Well, that's what they used to say.
They're not using the people as human shields. They're using the facilities that are only available to them. And the Israelis would be doing the same. They are raided the same. When you're living, taking on a big formidable army, and you don't have a standing army, you don't have a navy, you don't have an air force. You have to fight a guerrilla war.
And another point you might want to think about is during the Troubles here, where did the British Army put its bases? In many cases, close to a church, or very often close to a primary school. Now, if that's not doing exactly the same thing in a more clever way, then I don't know what is. Something else I wanted to say about that. Oh yes, you remember Vietnam? Yep. And the lesson that Thatcher learned from Vietnam. Because in Vietnam, Americans were sitting in their living rooms watching their son, in some cases, being blown to bits or shot dead. In other words, the war came into their living rooms. When Thatcher invaded Thatcher invaded the Falklands, when she sailed with her troops, or her troops were sent to the Falklands, the one thing she avoided: no media. There was no reporting of the deaths of people. You didn't see it. Now, I put it to you, if there had been a blanket ban on TV coverage or even radio coverage of what was happening in Gaza, and yet we were given the facts, would we be as horrified as we are when we see them? I think not.
Oh. There's a guy, he's a Jewish guy, Howard Jacobson. He was on like a Newsnight, and he said, "I wish they would stop showing those things in Gaza." And I was thinking, the reason you wish they would stop showing them is because it's showing the Israeli state for what they're doing, and he sort of justified it. There was a reason why Israel is doing what it's doing. Yeah, there's what happened on October 7th is unforgivable, but what Israel's doing is certainly unforgivable. It's mass murder.
Mm-hmm. But it's the idea of getting the thing, I think it's on the screens, it's because people are seeing it day after day after day, more and more pain, suffering, death, ruined buildings. It's that nightly diet or daily diet of that. That's what really, I think, has got many people up in arms about it. The media in this instance, at least, has played a positive role. Okay, let's move to a sporting event. Now, I'm amazed by this. At the weekend, a guy called Daniel Whiffen, that I'd never heard of before. He's from Ireland, and he won his second gold medal at the World Championships. And he won it in a world record time in the 1500 meters freestyle, and he was 10 seconds ahead of the next guy. Right. This guy's going to win gold at the Olympics for sure. Now, what are your thoughts on that, Pat?
Yeah, I saw him winning the 800 meters earlier in the week, and that was a much closer race. But in fact, I think he came second or third in the heat, so I wasn't so sure. But then he won the gold in the final, which was absolutely superb.
Yeah, and he won about 2 seconds, Pat. Not bad at all.
I would. It was tough going for a while, but he won the 1500 meters by 10 seconds. Like Jude, and swimming in terms that like
That's a
that's
mile.
like
That's a mile.
a mile.
Jeez,
Exactly.
I think they should
And
have given
some
him a medal
achievement.
just for swimming it, even he took half a day out of
She's Jude, if I had swum a mile. But anyway,
it.
bottom line of it, he looks like a university professor. He's like a fish in the water, and then when he comes out, he's this tall young fella, and he wears glasses, and he's very articulate.
Yeah.
No, you're dead right. I've never heard tell him. Daniel Whiffen is, no, it's not like Seamus O'Donnell or Pat McGard. So I don't know what the background is. Whiffen, what his background is.
I think the Whiffins came originally from somewhere like Belgium or somewhere like that. I think I was trying to
Yeah.
track down his background. But anyway, that's way in the past. He is an Irish guy.
But no, I think it's the last time we won a gold medal was Michelle Smith. Remember Michelle Smith?
Yeah, I was going to bring us to that. Now, Michelle Smith was 28 when she won, which was one of the things was held against her because swimmers tend to mature at an early age rather than in their late 20s.
Yeah.
But I bet you if you asked the average man in the street, was Michelle Smith, were the medals taken back from her? They would say, oh, yeah. She was found doing dope, feeding herself drugs to make her go faster. Neither of those two things have occurred. The medals were never taken back from her, and she was never tested positive for any banned substance. But it was a whole lot of sort of matters surrounding it, like her husband had been dope tested and found guilty for, what did he do? Was it the javelin or something?
I think he might have been a weightlifter.
Yeah.
I think he was but the thing about it, I'm open to correction this. Apparently, he took one test. A couple of times she avoided, being available for testing, if I remember correctly. Secondly, they took away, and I think I'm remembering from reading this at about 1996 or 7 or 8. The one time they did a test, and apparently there was so much whiskey in it. They said a human being couldn't live with that much whiskey. So they reckon something's either somebody had tampered with the sample, and so on. Yeah. So basically, while they said, and of course, and the swimming circles themselves, you made the point earlier. I remember years ago, it was young South African girl. She was 15 and she was world champion. As you get older, you get slower in swimming. Michelle came from nowhere. I remember Obama, I think was Obama the president at the time? I think it was, or maybe it was Clinton. And anyway, he went along and gave her all this, praise to Michelle. And an American swimmer, a woman, said there's something suspicious about that, and the fact that she's got faster, she's got older, and so on. So there was all sorts of suspicions. No, she'd never been proved anything, and she never had to hand back her medals. But if you note, Michelle Smith is never on any big shows. She's not regarded or lionized in Ireland as a sporting hero. She's disappeared.
Well, yes, she hasn't. She became a barrister. I think it was UCD.
Yeah, a very good one, apparently.
Became a barrister. She's written a book called, wait for this, Transnational Litigation, Jurisdiction and Procedure. That was one book. She's become an expert. Keep you awake at night. She is an expert in private international law, the recognition and enforcement of foreign judgments, EU law, and the law applicable to disputes following Brexit. If you remember at the time, she was a Gaeilgeoir. She had fluent Irish as well. She is one smart woman.
Did you look all that up?
I just thought it was worthwhile doing. What is this?
Did you not lose? When you're reading that out there, did you not lose the worldly love? Jesus.
No, I didn't. I was really impressed. I had a fairly good idea that she'd gone on to have a distinguished career in law, but I didn't realize it went to the point where she was publishing books about topics like jurisdiction and procedure and that kind of thing, and also EU law and the law applying to disputes following Brexit. I think that's very much on the ball. I'd love to see somebody interviewing her at length. I really would. I don't know. My heart wants her not to have taken drugs. My head tells me she probably did. And, you can't help but think the same thing about this young guy. At least I can't. I certainly hope it isn't another case of that, because this is equally dramatic. It's not the Olympic Games, it's the World Championships. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw this. An Irish swimmer I'd never heard of wiped the floor with everybody else. Is there no question?
Well, no, I don't. Well, everything's open to correction, but it's got much, much stricter since. By the way, since Michelle Smith, getting away with it now nearly impossible. They've like a lot of the Russians have been found out, a lot of the Chinese have been found out. You know, and this guy, a young guy, I think he's at college in America, isn't he? I think he might be anyway, and so on. Like, and the testing now, Jude, is very. So I'd be highly, highly unlikely that he's on anything. Or else that, you know, if he is, he must be a genius. But
maybe you're a kinder man than I am, Pat.
Yeah,
I tend to be.
Well, you know, put it like this, who knows? But I'd be very risky these days. That would be very, very risky.
I guess. Well, I certainly hope not.
Anyway, okay. Just changing the subject again.
Yeah.
You're just about Irish. Did you see Cillian Murphy?
Oh, the very thing I was going to say. Cillian Murphy. What did you think of him? How did he? What was the cut of his gym?
I was watching it last night. There was not. I was usually on a Sunday night. Myself and my dear missus sit down and watch Call the Midwife, and you know, and last night was the BAFTAs, and there was Cillian Murphy, winning the best actor, and Oppenheimer won the best film, and so on. And I thought, Jesus, it's been a very good couple of days for the Irish. Who else was in it? The young fella from Dublin. He was there as well.
Poor Little Things or something. Was that a movie?
Barry Kernan, Barry Kernan. That's it, and so on. So, but Cillian Murphy to walk away with the top thing. Now, saw what do you call him? Jesus, he played the Jewish West Side Story. I saw him last night. I thought he might won the best actor, but no, I went to actually Cillian Murphy, and it seemed to be Murphy's a very quiet fella, and apparently he doesn't like being famous all that much. He doesn't like the trappings that come with it. And I noticed he paid tribute to his wife and kids last night. I read a couple of weeks ago. He says they're the most important things in his life. They keep him grounded.
He's amazing. Very, to be in such an international star. I mean, he's right at the top of his career, of his, vocation. There's something boyish about him. He's smallish as well. And his hair is a very traditional sort of haircut, as was, in fact, the guy, what's his name, the producer of Oppenheimer.
Nolan,
Christopher Nolan. I just thought the whole thing was so good. I've only seen him in one thing. I've only watched bits of Peaky Blinder. I wish I'd watched it all. But In the Wind That Shakes the Barley, did you see that one?
Yeah.
That, for me, was one of the most standout performances I've ever seen in my life. Because when he was shot at the end, spoiler alert, but when he was shot at the end, my God, I felt I'd lost somebody that I knew. This is my friend that had been shot. Unbelievable. He really is a superb actor and extremely modest. I see when he was asked by some journalist for a radio station in Ireland if he wanted to say hello to anybody in Ireland. And he said, hi to everybody. And I'm a really proud Irishman. Of course I am. And it means a lot to me being Irish. I don't know what else I should say. Should I sing a rebel song? I just thought that was very good. We do keep harping on this thing about people being Irish, and then we get very excited about it, despite the fact that it has nothing to do with us. You and I have both sort of wallowed and gloried in the fact that Cillian Murphy won that BAFTA, and he's going to win an Oscar. He's going to win an Oscar for sure. We are delighted with this guy, Whiffen, who's come from nowhere and who's done so well. I'm still glad that Michelle Smith did such a good job, and I say she's innocent. She's innocent. So what is it about us that brings us to, as long as they're Irish, they're good. And we love seeing
I think it's really simple. We're basking in reflected glory. Someone years ago, remember all the Punch cartoons about the stupid Irish and about all the rest of it and so on. And nowadays, when you see a wee country like us, and we're an island off the west coast of Europe, the next parish is America, and 100 years ago, we were simple farming rural people. Now we're the second biggest exporter of high-tech software in the world. You go to Australia or Britain, and you find the doctors, the lawyers, the architects, all at the top of the tree. A hell of a lot of them are Irish. Know this thing of the thing that I was mentioned earlier on about the thick Irish. That myth and that stereotype has long gone. By the way, there's a girl. What's her name? Eileen Magner. She wrote a lovely article about the Irish in Australia. She says those who emigrated, 50 years ago with the working class, she was out visiting her son, and she's there now. The professional classes, they're the doctors, the lawyers, and everything. And she says they are nearly the top of the tree. And she says the Irish are well got.
Yeah, well, that's good. I sometimes wonder if we've been taught to think about sport in national terms. Whenever a runner or a high jumper or a boxer or whatever wins, the national anthem is played. And you ask yourself, well, what is that? I get a wee bit uneasy about that sometimes. But here, I have to end now because the time is up. But I want to leave you with a good joke, right? Good joke. Good joke is Anthony Blinken has encouraged the leaders here in the north of Ireland to work collaboratively to deliver prosperity for the people of Northern Ireland and to model cooperative power sharing for the world to see. This is Anthony Blinken.
Anthony Blinken,
his arse from his elbow.
He's neutral on the side of the Israelis. Brilliant.
Okay, that's a good joke.
All the best, Jim.
Okay, Pat.
Good luck.